During the promotion of this film, they made a lot of promises. They said Scream 7, watch out, it's going to be redefining what the Scream franchise is. But did they deliver? Welcome back, everyone. Today we're here to talk about Scream 7. I cannot believe we're on Scream 7, but here we are. And we're bringing back a lot of characters from the franchise while also introducing some new people and giving Sydney a whole family. So there's a lot going on here that we got to talk about when it comes to this film and my feelings on it. But before we get into it, I want to know, what's your favorite scary movie? Let me know down in the comments below. And imagine I said that in my Ghostface voice because I'm losing my voice a little bit right now, so I cannot do any voices. Someone get a voice changer on me. When it comes to this film, what I liked about it, what I enjoyed, is the beginning of the film. And in fact, I think the first act of this movie is actually quite good. It has a lot of the things that I love about Scream and captures the essence of what makes Scream a fun, scary movie. We start off with revisiting the original house from Scream, and we have this couple that's staying there because the boyfriend is a huge fan of the Stab films. And I thought that whole idea of what's going on with this, turning the house into like an Airbnb, and all of these references back to the original story of what happened in early Screams, because this guy's like a mega fan. All of that was so fun, and that's something that I love about Scream. There's an element of self-awareness that this franchise has that I just think is quite charming, and the beginning of the movie had the perfect level of that. Now, granted, as time goes on and we get further into this film, I do think they kind of cross the line beyond what I consider to be fun nostalgia versus just like nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia baiting to just make me interested by being like, remember this thing? Remember Stu? Remember scary movies? And there's a lot of that continues to happen in this film, to the point that it kind of put a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth by the end of it. But at the beginning, it was a fun time. The acting in this movie, I think, is still quite good, even though the actors are not given as much to work with at times. I loved seeing Anna Camp in this. I love her anytime she appears in anything. I just love her. She's such a good actress. And there's a lot of talent in the film, but ultimately, for a runtime of just shy of 2 hours, we do not do enough with these characters to make us care. So it doesn't matter how good the actors are. I can't care about the characters because we have no time to really invest in them. We're too busy doing other stuff. Stuff like showing us some boring cinematography. My goodness, so much of the cinematography in this film is bland. And unfortunately, it makes the middle of the film feel like it's dragging even more than it is. Because what this film ends up doing is, instead of giving us character moments to make us care about the people in peril, which, by the way, for horror films, I think is actually essential for you to have a great horror film, I have to actually care about the people in danger. Instead of doing any of that, we were focused on these sequences of how people meet their ends and running around, running back and forth, running here and running there. And the way that some things are also intercut in terms of what's going on with this character and then what's happening over here with this character, and how we go back and forth between different members of the family, Sydney, her husband Mark, her daughter Tatum, that kind of just slows any of the progress. So while the beginning of the film feels quite snappy, boom, 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 the middle of the film feels like it's dragging. It's like dragging a dead body across the concrete, you know what I mean? It's slow and painful. The actors that I feel did the most with what they were given was Neve Campbell and Joel McHale for me. They really stood out as kind of the best in this production. And I think it's also because they're kind of given some of the most to work with, or maybe it's just that they make the most of what they have. There's a whole little establishing scene in the beginning where we're introduced to them and their relationship. And it's really cute, actually, between Sydney and her husband, Mark, and just establishing the romance between them, their love of one another, their family dynamic. And it actually made me really care about Mark's character, which is also kind of weird in this film, that we care a little bit about the family at the beginning, at least, because by the end of it, you wouldn't even be able to guess that any of that had happened at the beginning. There is a point where they put one of the family members in danger, like, we're talking about life or death here, and yet they do so little with that by the end of the film, that character feels like they've almost become an afterthought, that you're like, why did we even go there if we weren't going to do anything with it? There's no emotional stakes. The other members of the family don't necessarily know how in peril this person is until later when, like I said, they just kind of become an afterthought anyways. So there's no real emotional stakes that hit in this film. And while there's still some suspense in the sequences, and there are some sequences that are quite unique in this, and then there are also some sequences that I feel play on tried and true tropes already established in the franchise, you don't really care about what will happen to the people, but there are some times where the physical acting or just the way a sequence is laid out or plays out makes it still feel satisfying and entertaining to watch. Like the one that we see in the trailer with Sydney and her daughter going through the wall. That sequence I thought was quite good. Another one that I really like is we have one of Tatum's friends, Chloe. There's a whole sequence where she's in the bar and she's trying to get away from Ghostface. And I felt like they were almost giving her a Survivor Girl moment that felt almost earned. I think Celeste O'Connor is just a good actress that has been stuck in some not so great movies. Madam Web, I'm looking at you. And this film isn't necessarily bad, to be fair. It is entertaining. I did enjoy parts of it. However, it is not a great film. It is like a passable film for me. It's not even like really good. It just passes because there's so much of it that just feels like a slog, honestly. And especially when you have visuals that just aren't very compelling, there's not much here to hold your attention. You don't really care about the characters. Visually, not a lot is going on. I mean, the gore looks great, but the brutal moments of this film can only take us so far, simply because we don't really connect to these characters enough. And the thing that really bothers me with horror is when people get focused more on the brutality of horror and lose the human connection of where fear comes from and why we feel fear. You need to be able to see yourself in a character, or you need to be able to just care about a character, which usually we care about characters when we feel we can connect with them in some way. There's some level of empathy there, that we connect with. And when you don't have that, it's just a blasé film. It's very mid overall as a result. And let's not even talk about the ending of this. I mean, let's talk about the ending of this. I won't spoil it for you though, so don't worry. We're not going to get into whodunit, but I will just say the whodunit element of this film feels quite slapdash to me. When you get to it, you are going to be like, what? I just feel like it's lazy writing that isn't really coming from anything that we built in the film, but it's also because this film isn't really focused on building anything. It's more about getting through certain sequences, getting from point A to point B so we can get to this part where Ghostface does this thing. And that's really mostly what it's about. So when you get to the end and the ending kind of feels like weird and like it doesn't really connect, I'm not really surprised. I just was kind of like, I mean, it was such an unexpected reveal that you could have done something cool with that. What it feels like to me is that the first act of the film ends at a point where Gale comes in, and we've seemingly sort of dealt with Ghostface, but we're just scratching the surface of a mystery. And then from that point on, they had to figure out what the actual mystery was, and then they just didn't really have anything to write, so they just kept the story going because they realized, You know, this has only been about 40 minutes of film and we got to keep it going. And so that's why we got the ending we got. Because they were trying to think of something that was so outside of the box that they didn't actually focus on how it fits into the story at large in any meaningful way. However, this film does kind of feel like it was made in the 90s, and there is a little bit of nostalgia that I get from it that feels satisfying. It feels like I'm watching almost like a late 90s, early 2000s film, or maybe even an early 90s film. It's just unfortunate that sometimes the look of this feels like some of the worst of that era. But hey, it was a movie that I watched, and I won't say that I regretted my time, but could you spend it better? I mean, you could go watch Send Help, which I think is an excellent film. So for me, this one was just kind of meh. I think I would put it somewhere, if I were to rate it, around like three stars out of 5. It's like okay. I don't think you'll hate it, but I don't think you'll love it either. That's pretty much what I got for Scream 7. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How do you feel as well about franchises that go on this long? And what do you think is necessary to keep them going on in a way that feels meaningful, in a way that feels like we've got momentum with this? And how do you feel when people promise something like, we're going to completely change this franchise, and then they just give you nostalgia bait, basically, is what this was? How do you feel about that? Because me personally, I feel like I was tricked. But that's all I have for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. And until next time, friends, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you love when I talk about horror movies, you need to check this out.